for that. But I guess a black side is why ass is fast. So when I tap, hold, and load in 4K, I hope she don't tell me when they owe me to a core day, cause those ain't the kind of texts that my iPhone need. Now she asks the quince what them eye rolls mean. While I was having better sex when I sold weed, so you can say the internet, but I show speed. Man, I swear that she's a girl I got to have. Yes, I got to have you, girl. And I'll do anything to make you come with me. And I guarantee you're coming with me. Man, I swear that she's a girl I got to have. Cause I got to have you, girl. And I'll do anything to make you come with me. And I guarantee you're coming with me. With this much jewelry set up in the safe, why I go on dates with 6, 7, and 8s when I can pull up in a 6, 7, or 8? But my 6 cents told me, Dan, you bit the bait. Cause for the last 7 days I make up all this 8. So I'm hanging out late, but the results could be lethal. I'm praying Laura Styles don't report this to Ebro. If they was all cool with it, I would be Neo. But if they all sue for it, I'm the CEO. The boss like D-Lo found a new primo. So the post on my feed only feed my ego. And it don't take Ray-Bans that came with the meta. Let's see that Rahab band the day that he met her. So I'm feeling up the sprinter, cause we back on the streets. Tempted to be a center by these Afro beats. I mean, cause that kinda to make a cheat. Man, I swear that she's a girl I got to have. Yes, I got to have you, girl. And I'll do anything to make you come with me. And I guarantee you're coming with me. Man, I swear that she's a girl I got to have. Cause I got to have you, girl. And I'll do anything to make you come with me. And I guarantee you're coming with me.
Royal Junction Indian Cuisine and Bar is a proud sponsor of 881 The Berg.
Royal Junction is an Indian family-style restaurant located on the first floor of the 420 building at 420 North Pearl Street, right next to the Clymer Museum.
They're now offering a new menu with late-night bites after 10 p.m. and are open Monday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. If you would like to find out more or place an order, you can visit their website at rjellensburg.com or by calling them at 509-201-1012.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Vicky'S Dungeon. Back at it again. Another week, another day, another battle to be fought after a battle won. Every day, man. Every day is a battle for everyone in some way, whether it's easy or not. I don't know why I just immediately jumped to that deep end, but I'm already deep right now. We get deep at Vicky'S Dungeon. I mean, we do at the end of every episode we do. When I give out my unsolicited grain of salt advice in life. But anyway, welcome back to another week. And yeah, I'm excited for this episode this week because for the first time ever, this is historic in the history of Vicky'S Dungeon. For the first time ever, after so long of me trying to get it on this show, I finally achieved it. We are officially going to play Dungeon Synth on this episode for the first time ever in Vicky'S Dungeon history. It took a long time to get here, but you know what? We're here now. So, to cue us in for fantasy news, to get the show started, first of all, let's get the main OG to get us in. Let's get a hey yo from Scott Hall.
Hey yo!
Thank you, Scott. Rest in peace, sir. One of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. He's definitely, if he was still around and he hadn't passed on, he would be one of the wrestlers that I would want on the show to interview. Absolutely. That man, of course, playing the character and amazing wrestler Reza Ramon in the WWF before it was WWE. And then he went on to WCW to play as like a much more wrestler edgy version of himself and co-found, whatever the word is, he co-found the legendary wrestling faction, the NWO. Pretty amazing. But with him giving us the cue for the entire show, let's have one of my favorite music artists of all time, a man who I saw live this last April, and it was pretty awesome. This is, of course, Mortis, Mortiis, from Norway, known as the godfather of Dungeon Synth. And this is from his first album. I believe it is pronounced Furtahushk. I believe it's pronounced that. This is Furtahushk, Part 1. Hope you enjoy. This is legendary Dungeon Synth. Talk to you in a minute. All right, man. That was, of course, Fürtuhusk Part 1. I think that's how it's pronounced. Of Mortis's debut album from the early 90s, just after he left the band Emperor to pursue his dungeon synth ideas. So pretty cool stuff, man. I was so happy to play that. So happy to play that. That was so cool. One of my favorite artists of all time, that's for sure. But now that he's played us in, let's get a little bit of fantasy news going on. Let's get our fantasy horns to get us in. There we go. F yeah. Cool. Let's get into Lord of the Rings stuff. Game of Thrones stuff this week. Not really any major news this week, but we got the Dunk and Egg ending, which is pretty cool. And to kind of replace the news, just to kind of, have something to talk about outside of the Dunk and Egg review, I'll do probably my top 5 just favorite Song of Ice and Fire characters, in just the whole universe. But to review the Dunk and Egg finale, I loved it. I thought it was just a really nice wrap-up episode. A lot of people were complaining that it felt like filler, but I really don't think it was. It really was just a nice wrap-up episode. I mean, I guess you could, in theory, end it with the last episode before that, but at the same time, I don't know. Maybe people weren't saying that, but either way, I thought it was a really good wrap-up episode where you just got to tie up all the knots and everything. And I really liked the scene with Maekar, with Dunk, where Maekar is just like, yeah, like, people are going to call me a kinslayer for the rest of my life. The gods know I didn't mean to kill Baelor, but everyone else is going to think so. And, I felt for him in there, and we, of course, know from the lore that Maekar goes on to be the next king of Westeros, since Baelor has been killed at this point. Maekar goes on to be the next king of Westeros, and he's known as like this warrior king who really fights a lot of stuff, and I think he puts down a lot of rebellions, and I think he doesn't fight with the Dornish, I think. I'm pretty sure he fights, I forget, but he's known as like a warrior king, and his portrait, painted of him is really, really cool, where he's one of the few he's the only Targaryen king in his kind of portrait that's holding just this giant mace, and I think he has his own crown made as well, because I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe there were 4 different Targaryen crowns, I believe. I could be wrong. Of course, we had the first crown of Aegon. I believe Jaehaerys had his own crown, and then Daeron the First took up the Aegon's crown after the crown of Jaehaerys, I'm assuming, was lost in the Dance of the Dragons, because the last person I think we know that had it was probably Rhaenyra. After Viserys had it. But also, I believe that Maekar had his own crown made. I believe he did. And that's the third, I think, because you had the Aegon, you had Jaehaerys, Maekar, and I believe Aerys II may have had his own crown. I know in the artwork he's depicted as having like a different looking crown than the other guys, at least from the portrait I've seen, or I could be wrong. But that's pretty cool about Maekar, and I love that it ended with Maekar just being like, where the F is Aegon? Like, where did he go? And I kind of like that little subtle change from the source material, where the source material, I think, at least gives us the answer of Maekar letting Egg go with Dunk to squire with him. And in the show, Maekar is just like, where the F is Aegon? And Aegon's just off with Dunk. And I just think it's kind of a funny ending. And I don't know. I thought it was a good ending of a show. I really liked it. I'm sad that I have to wait a year for another Game of Thrones show to come out. But at the same time, I'm really happy that the next season is going to come out in only a year. Because if there's anything I didn't like about the later seasons of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, is that we had to wait at least 2 years between each season, which, it's fair. Making these things are hard, but at the same time, it's annoying when you have to wait 2 years for a season of a show, and then it's out for like 2.5 months maybe, and then that's it, But I think this was well worth the wait, and I think the next season will be well worth the wait, and I'm excited for House of the Dragon season 3, and I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a good time. And this season I thought was great. I guess I could give it a rating as a whole, and The only thing I didn't love about the season is the episode, the second to last one, where I wish we saw more of the actual Trial of Seven fight, just a little bit more, and then a little bit less of the flashback. You know, that was my only thing. And I didn't hate it or anything like that. I remember just thinking at times, or not really at times, but at one point I was like, all right, can we keep it going? I mean, can we kind of keep the fight going, and can we just end the flashback already? But that's my only kind of critique. I still really liked the flashback, and especially when for the first time ever, my favorite character, I mean, now you're already going to know my number one from the top 5 list of the Song of Ice and Fire characters. For the first time ever, we got to see them actually name drop Daemon Blackfire in the series, which I thought was so cool. And also I thought it was cool how people were saying like the Black Dragon's war is over and stuff like that. And I liked hearing the blacksmith saying like Daemon's war is over. And I just was like, oh my God, they just name dropped it. Like Daemon Blackfire, my favorite character. And I just think that's really cool. But I thought that was a great episode though, regardless. But because of just that small little thing, I'm going to put it at like a 9.5 out of 10, which is still a crazy high rating. And I honestly think, and I'm with a lot of people who were saying this, I heard other people say this first, and I thought about it, and I went, yeah, honestly, I'm going to say yeah. I think ever since season 4 of Game of Thrones, this has been the best Game of Thrones thing to come out ever since then, probably. Keep in mind, I wasn't watching Game of Thrones when it was on season 4. I was like, how old was I when I started watching that show? I know it came out in 2011, so I was probably like 13, and I didn't start watching the show until I was like 16, so I was like in 8th grade when that 4th season came out, and so I wasn't watching it at the time, but a lot of people are saying that it's the best thing we've gotten since that golden era of Game of Thrones, and honestly, I guess I'm kind of with them, but I think House of the Dragon Season 1 is way up there too, and I think if you want to rank it in order, it's probably, for me personally, first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones, and then I'm going to go House of the Dragon Season 1, just because I love Targaryens, and that's that whole part of the mythos is what makes me love it so much, and then Dunk and Egg Season 1, and then I guess House of the Dragon Season 2, and then the other Game of Thrones kind of Season 6, 7, and 8 would probably be like at the end for me, the low part of it. Not saying they're bad, just I don't really prefer them if I'm honest. But I thought the series was great as a whole, and I'm excited for the Mystery Night. Oh, I'm sorry, no, the Sworn Sword to be adapted next. That's the second Dunk and Egg novella, and I'm looking forward to, of course, the Mystery Night being adapted because we'll see Daemon Blackfire's son, Daemon II, essentially try to start the second Blackfire Rebellion, and we'll get to see Bloodraven show up, who's, of course, in the main series, and some other characters that are probably in there too, but I don't remember. But yeah, I'm excited for it, dude. I'm excited. But with that being said, why don't we get into my top 5 favorite A Song of Ice and Fire characters? I've been thinking about this for a long time because most of them are Targaryens, if I'm honest. And if they're not Targaryens, they're Targaryen bastards. Maybe like one character isn't in the Targaryen kind of family tree, I guess. But, you know, regardless, I love these characters. But if I had to go my top 5, number 5, or let's go from like my favorite to my least favorite. That's easier for me to rank. I would say my favorite is, of course, Daemon Blackfire. Him, of course, being the bastard son of Aegon IV, who was legitimized on the deathbed of Aegon IV himself, and the guy who started the Blackfire rebellions. And I think it's pretty interesting that he got the sword Blackfire, which is the Sword of Kings, like arguably the most significant kind of street cred thing in all of Westeros. Like if there was one thing that you could have in Westeros that would be more like, I don't know, like bling kind of thing. I don't know, like if there's anything such as bling in Westeros, or just any kind of object you could hold and it would instantly give you respect. Outside of a dragon, it's the sword Blackfire, because that's the sword that King Aegon the First Targaryen, you know, it's the sword that he wielded as he rode the greatest dragon of all time to conquer Westeros, and that's pretty cool. And Daemon Blackfire not only was given that sword, but that's where he got his name, Blackfire. and he started the first Blackfire Rebellion with the help of his best buddy, Aegor Bittersteel Rivers, who is his half-brother. They both share the same dad. And then they went on to start the first of 5 Blackfire Rebellions. And it's to the point where we're probably going to get a 6th Blackfire Rebellion in the books at this point. Like 6 Blackfire Rebellions. That's freaking crazy. But anyway, pretty awesome character. He's my favorite, hands down. And to be honest, I love this character so much that I really feel like, because I know in the future they're going to probably do flashbacks to the Blackfire Rebellions in the future Dunk and Egg books, or future Dunk and Egg movies and the books, show. What am I talking about? I'm really tired today. That's why it's hard for me to talk. But the future Dunk and Egg seasons are probably going to talk about the Blackfire Rebellions, and probably the future novellas, if they ever come out, they're going to go into the Blackfire Rebellions a little bit more too, because it's, they take place during a time where it's fresh after the first Blackfire Rebellion, and the coming 4 Blackfire Rebellions are on their way. And I know that Dunk and Egg personally take part in fighting against at least one Blackfire Rebellion when Egg is actually king. I believe it's with Hagon Blackfire. And then under the reign of Jaehaerys II, we had the last Blackfire Rebellion with Meleys the Monstrous, of course. And that's where actually a lot of Game of Thrones characters are in that as well. You have Barristan Selmy, the knight from the first 5 seasons at least, and pretty much all the books. Well, he's in all the books. He's not dead in the books yet, at least. He's the one who personally slew Meleys the Monstrous, who was the last Blackfire quote-unquote pretender. But pretty cool. But anyway, that being said, I love Daemon Blackfire. I think he's a really cool character. Anyways, number 2, I'm going to put pretty much the guy who's, I guess, up there as like one of his bitter rivals. I mean, I know that he was the bitter rival of Bittersteel, but at the same time, anyway, I'm going to put Brynden Rivers, who's actually Daemon's half-brother, one of the other great bastards of Aegon IV, as number 2, just because I like that he's... First of all, I like how... I love his look, where he has the Targaryen white hair and all that, but he's also an albino, so he has like just milk white skin and red eyes, and he has this white hair with it, and he has a red birthmark on his cheek that looks like a bird, so people gave him the nickname Blood Raven. And I love that he loses an eye to Bittersteel, and he wears an eye patch, which makes him look even cooler. And I think it's cool that he's one of the few characters that's actually a great archer and not like a sword fighter or swordsman or an axeman. He's a great archer, and he uses weirwood arrows, and weirwood is a wood in Game of Thrones that's like has magical properties, like paganistic magical properties. So he uses those, and he also was like rumored to be a sorcerer in that world. And the really interesting thing about the Game of Thrones world is that sorcery is a very arcane thing. There's not a lot. It's not like Harry Potter, where there's kind of the method of it. The method to its madness has been discovered, and it's taught to people, commonly in that wizarding world. Like, it's something you can, of course, learn in the Game of Thrones world, but it's still something that's very much not fully dialed into. Like, they don't fully understand it. That's why there's pretty rare instances of magic in the Game of Thrones universe, and whenever it happens, it's not explained how it really works, other than just the character knows how to do it, and it's not explained exactly how they know how to do it, and very few know how to do it. And it's just a really interesting thing. And Bloodraven is one of those characters that he's most likely a sorcerer, but it's never explained exactly how, and just begs the question of like, okay, well, then I just want to know how he came up with all this stuff. Like, how did he learn this? And it's never explained, which I really like. It adds that kind of aura of mystery to him. And, I love a good aura of mystery added to things. That's one of the reasons I love Bigfoot and, like, UFOs and paranormal stuff, which is a weird comparison to Game of Thrones. But, hey, I just love the mystery not being solved there, and that's what I really like. And so Bloodraven is a guy who knows sorcery, and I like that he's a guy who's he's very much a super gray, like dark gray character, like borderline evil, where he's so loyal to the crown, that he does dishonorable things in the name of just keeping the peace, and the one thing that, I guess the two things is, first, he's the guy who kills Daemon Blackfyre on the Battle of the Redgrass Field. Daemon Blackfyre fights this amazing duel with Gawain Corbray, I believe the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and they have they have an hour-long fight, I believe, and every time their swords touched, or clashed rather, the sound could be heard from miles around. Like, it was this epic duel between this, rebel claimant to the throne with this kind of great knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and Gawain Corbray loses, and because Daemon Blackfyre was, the interesting thing about Daemon Blackfyre is that it's much more likely that he was pushed to rebel and that he didn't actually want to do it, really. And it's much more likely that Bittersteel was the guy really behind the Blackfyre rebellions, and he just saw that because he was good buds with Daemon Blackfyre, and most people wanted Daemon to be king and not Daeron the First Son, Baelor Breakspear, who we see in Dunk and Egg, because most people just wanted a typical Targaryen king. That was something that Bittersteel saw, and Bittersteel had a bitter rival with Bloodraven. He's the one who took out Bloodraven's eye, and he, for a time, would have been the heir to the throne because his mother was almost married to King Daeron, Barbara Bracken, but that didn't work out, and he was very bitter about that. And on top of that, Brynden Rivers, who's Bloodraven, keep in mind the great bastards of Aegon IV, got to choose like their own alter ego kind of names. And so you have Brynden Rivers being Bloodraven, you have Daemon Waters becoming Daemon Blackfyre, and then you have Shiera Waters becoming Shiera Rivers, I believe, becoming Shiera Seastar. And then there's one more that I'm forgetting, but those are the main three, I believe. But anyway, what was I going to say? But yeah, like Bittersteel had this bitter rivalry with Bloodraven because Bloodraven stole Bittersteel's great love, and ain't that a bummer? And that's what people think fueled Bittersteel to kind of push his good bud Daemon to be like, hey, everyone would rather you be king anyway, and you also not only would make a great king, but you straight up wield the sword of kings, Blackfyre, and nobody wants Daeron to be king, so I think you should just rebel. And that's what people think is the true story behind the Blackfyres. But of course, Daemon, I'm saying all this to lead up to say that Daemon was actually known as a charismatic, just kind of nice guy. And so because he was a charismatic, nice guy, once he defeats Gawain Corbray, he insists that his men take him to a battle tent and not imprison him, but to give him aid, like health, like medical aid to heal him. And, sadly, Bloodraven, being the dishonorable man he is, him, along with his personal kind of group of archers that are called the Raven's Teeth, decide to take advantage of that opportunity and rain arrows down on Daemon Blackfyre, and that's what kills him. And that's what kills Daemon's sons as well. Not all of them, but I think most of them. And that's what was the end of Daemon Blackfyre. And that was the first dishonorable thing he did. And then leading into the second thing that I mentioned earlier, the thing that gets him straight up sent to the wall, which in the Game of Thrones universe is just a place you go to, like, as like a death sentence, like a prison, like a life sentence. Like once you go to the wall, you can't ever leave, and you're forced to just stay, manning this giant ice wall in the north that's meant to just keep out wildlings in the north. Because at this time, nobody believed in the iced apocalypse happening at this point in the Game of Thrones universe. No one thought it was going to happen. So the wall and the Night's Watch was reduced to be just a place where all the prisoners and rejects and everything went to serve out their lives, keeping the wild people in the north out of the Seven Kingdoms. And so, of course, Bloodraven is sent there after he dishonorably kills Aenys Blackfyre. And Aenys Blackfyre, during a time of a succession crisis in the Targaryens, pretty much when they were trying to figure out who should be the next king, because we don't really know if the current heirs we have are good enough to be the king, Aenys Blackfyre, basically from across the Narrow Sea in another continent, was like, hey, I would like to be king if that's cool with you guys. But Bloodraven, being the very schemy, dishonorable guy he is just kind of like, oh yeah, sure, why don't you come over and make your claim? We promise we won't do anything. I promise you safe passage, and you can make your claim, and whether we say yes or no, we'll just, you'll be safe, and if we say yes, you'll be king, and if we say no, we'll just let you go back to the east. And so he goes, and of course, Bloodraven just chops his head off and ruthlessly crushed another Blackfire. And because of this, the one who ended up becoming king, who was Egg from Duncan Egg, this is when he ascends the throne, he sends Bloodraven to the Wall. And Bloodraven serves as the Lord Commander of the Wall for some time before he goes beyond the Wall and disappears. And then we see him again in the main series as this magical tree wizard who's, unnaturally old. He's like 120 years old, and he's that old because he's been magically able to live this long from sitting in this magical, weirwood tree. And that's when he becomes the three-eyed raven or the three-eyed crow, depending on the version you're reading. And that's, of course, the character that Bran learns to see the past and future with, and, all in a pursuit of protecting the world from a great apocalypse, a great frozen apocalypse. So that's my number 2 after that long-winded thing. But yeah, number 3, I also really like Aemond One-Eye, who's Aemond Targaryen from the Dance of the Dragons, purely because I love his backstory being that he was this kind of bullied kid growing up, and then that kind of just forces him internally. It makes him turn into this bitter, unforgiving person who just succeeds better than anybody else in his family, and it's all in pursuit of being better than everyone else. And he gets to the point where he is this one-eyed, white-haired prince who has a jewel in one of his eyes, which looks so cool. I really wish they just had the jewel out all the time in the TV show, but they rarely show it. They show it when he reveals it, and then they show it when he's in the brothel. And the rest of the time, they just show him with his eye patch, which practicality-wise makes sense, but I just think the jewel looks cooler, I'm just going to be honest. And then, of course, he ends up riding Vhagar, which is the greatest, biggest dragon in the world at that time, second only to Balerion. So I just really like him. I think that's a cool character. Number 4 is probably going to be... I really like Daeron Targaryen the First. I think he's definitely my favorite Targaryen king. And I think he's a really cool character because he was the first to almost conquered Dorne. He honestly technically won. The reason Dorne beat him was because they dishonorably killed him under a peace banner. They just baited him by saying like, oh, let's have a peaceful conversation under a white flag. And so he arrives and then they just kill him. And that's how the Dornish defeated, the Targaryens in that war for Dorne. And what's pretty interesting thing about that is that Daeron conquered the Seven Kingdoms, conquered Dorne almost without dragons, and Aegon, his sisters Rhaenys and Visenya, who all had dragons, tried to conquer Dorne so many times, and they for like years, and they never came close. And then Daeron, without dragons, pretty much almost does it. And honestly, you could argue technically did it, which is pretty amazing. And I just love the line of them saying, because, the Targaryens refer to themselves as dragons because they believe they are connected to the dragons in some way, magically, and with their blood. That's why they call themselves the blood of the dragon, and also refer to themselves as dragons. And I love the line in the lore where apparently in the small council chamber, where the king and his advisors, talk about big decisions for the kingdom, they say to Daeron, who's freshly crowned and he's like 18 or 19, and they say, why do you want to conquer Dorne? Like, we would need dragons to do that, and we don't have those anymore. And I love his response to that is just saying, well, you see a dragon before you. And that's just so cool. They're like, you need a dragon to conquer Dorne. And he's like, you see a dragon before you. And that's so cool. And you know what? The guy basically did it, which is so cool. So he's number 4 for sure. And I guess number 5, I think Aemon the Dragon Knight is pretty cool. Probably the greatest knight in the history of Westeros. And he's definitely seen as probably either him or Arthur Dayne, either one of those knights. But I think I really like Aemon the Dragon Knight just because he's known as such a great hero. But I also like Arthur Dayne. Maybe I'm gonna put Arthur Dayne there. Arthur Dayne because he was the greatest swordsman in the history of Westeros, and on top of that, he was from a House Dayne, that family, and it's one of the only. It's I think the only house to have a sword that isn't made of Valyrian steel. And I mean like a major house. And for those of you that don't know, in the Game of Thrones universe, every major family, like political family in Westeros, which is the main continent that Game of Thrones takes place on, where all the seven kingdoms are and how they're all ruled under one king, all like seven kingdoms as vassal states to one king. And one of the major families in those kingdoms is House Dayne, and all of the major families have a Valyrian steel sword, and it's an heirloom. And Valyrian steel, as opposed to regular steel, is steel from a destroyed, lost civilization known as Valyria, and the steel itself is sharper, more durable, and just miles ahead of anything else that can be made in the world. And it's even imbued with like magical spells woven into it and just stuff like that just makes it far superior, like space age level kind of quality of steel, which is really, really cool. But House Dayne doesn't have one of those, and they also don't have a regular sword. What they do have, though, is they have a sword that's called Dawn, and the steel itself is made from a fallen star. So it's made of like just this unknown metal from space, basically, which is really cool to me. And so, you know what? I'm going to put Arthur Dayne there just because I really like how there's a mystery kind of about him, because we don't really know much about him other than the lore. If we see any adaptation of him, it would only be if there was like Robert's Rebellion kind of coming to the screen, which I hope happens. But probably him. I'm not really sure who I'd want as my number 5, but I guess I'll put him as number 5, is probably Arthur Dayne, because greatest swordsman ever lived. He has this really cool sword, Dawn, and he's from a Dornish house, which I think is really cool. And on top of that, he is just kind of this more mysterious character, which is kind of interesting. And we actually don't really know the full details of his death. It's said that, Ned Stark beat him in battle, but, I mean, Season 6 of Game of Thrones said that may not be true. May not be true, actually. So I'm curious about that. But that's it for Game of Thrones news this week and my little top 5 list. Let's play another Mortis song, and then we'll get into some Lord of the Rings news. Sound good? I hope so. All right, I'll talk to you in a minute. This is going to be Mortis with Furtuhusk Part 2. Hope you enjoy. Oh, right. That was, of course, Mortis with Furtehusk Part 2 from his debut album. Of course, that being the first album, arguably, I guess, in the history of Dungeon Synth, maybe? I'm not quite sure. But he is accredited along with Varg Vikernes of Burzum, that infamous figure in black metal, as being, I mean, they're accredited, I guess, or accredited, whatever the word is, as I guess being the godfathers of Dungeon Synth. But I think Mortis gets the bulk of that credit, which is pretty interesting. I think Varg, I think he's more kind of credited as kind of a dark ambient guy, but I mean, yeah, as controversial as that guy is, I mean, I definitely think some of his music is really good, but at the same time, you know, I understand why people don't want to listen to his music, and I get you, man. It's kind of hard for me to listen to his stuff, but anyway, what isn't hard for me to listen to is, of course, Mortis. Yeah, man, I'm such a big fan of that guy, and he's coming back to Seattle in May, I believe, and I might go see him. One of the things I like about Mortis is that he's not a controversial figure in the kind of world of black metal. You know, as much as I love that genre of music, you know, and keep in mind, I love it for the art, and it's hard for me. I just like can't get into it if there's controversy around an artist, and I don't think I should get into what the controversies are, but regardless, it's hard for me to get into, you know, it's just hard for me to get into the music. And, you know, I mean, it's hard for me to separate art from the artist at times, and you know, I guess I'm a proponent of that, or a advocate of separating art from the artist. But it's hard sometimes, man. If an artist is just like an a-hole, just isn't a fun guy to be around, then yeah, I can separate art from the artist. But if there are guys that go a lot further than that, it's the further you go from that, the harder it is for me to separate art from the artist. I'll just say that. And but one of the guys that you don't need to do that with his Mortis, and he makes some really great stuff, and it's pretty cool. He was an Emperor as, I believe, the drummer or the bass player, and he was kicked out, sadly, and actually what's really cool is he was the guy who came up with the name Emperor for the band Emperor, which is such a cool name, Emperor, especially for the black metal kind of sound and aesthetic. Really, really cool name. And he went on to form his own kind of one-man synth project. And I think he said it was him wanting to go beyond metal and just kind of go beyond, just go for more capturing a feeling. And he was also getting really into Tolkien and stuff like that. And he came up with this really cool concept, which was Dungeon Synth. He didn't name it Dungeon Synth. It was really more under the umbrella, I guess, of dark ambient. And it wasn't until I think the late 2000s, I think, or sometime in the 2000s, or at least sometime after the 90s, that somebody actually started going through these dark ambient kind of artists and sifting out the ones that sounded like fantasy, kind of retro fantasy soundtracks. And then came up, and somebody else, I guess, came up with the name Dungeon Synth, and then they all got put under that umbrella. And I'm grateful that happen, because it's such a cool genre of music, Dungeon Synth. If you want to feel like you're in an old fantasy movie, video game, board game. I was going to say card game, but then I thought a cardboard game. There you go. Of fantasy, check out Dungeon Synth, man. And Mortis is a great place to start, especially with his first album, Furtehusk. My favorite album is probably his second record, and I also really like the one Stargate. That's a really cool one. I'm thinking about playing Stargate on this show, because I think we have the rights to. I don't want to say we have the rights to it, but I think we have the legality to play that record on this show. So I might do it. Probably next week. It's just not in the playlist this week, but that's a pretty interesting record of Mortis, because I think it's the only one that only had one pressing of vinyl. And pretty much all the other ones you can pretty easily, or at least it's not crazy hard to find the vinyl pressings of every other album he did. But the only one that you basically can't find anywhere on vinyl and only on CD is Stargate. And it's a pretty cool album. It's a really cool album. And I like the cover. It's so gnarly and just bizarre and weird. And I like it. And I think it's cool that he kind of went beyond just the corpse paint look for black metal, and he just straight up dressed like a witch. Like, he got a prosthetic long pointy nose and the pointy ears, and like just went like like you have all these other guys that are wearing corpse paint and playing these like really fast, like lo-fi heavy metal. And then you have this guy over here as a lone wolf, not in a band, lone wolf. And he's dressed like a witch and he's playing on a synthesizer and it's just capturing this eerie retro feeling. And it's really cool. But yeah, Dungeon Synth is probably one of my favorite genres of music for sure. Faux show. And actually later on in the show tonight, I'm going to go over my interview that I had with a Dungeon Synth artist. I was corresponding with a Gnome Synth artist, which is a kind of a subgenre of Dungeon Synth, Gnome Synth, artist by the name of Killer Gnome, and I've been corresponding with him for the last few weeks. And he granted me the honor of letting me send him a bunch of questions I had, and he sent me back his answers, and we're going to go over them tonight. I'm really excited. And before I get into it, and I'll make sure to do it afterwards because you deserve it, Killer Gnome, I just want to say thank you, sir. Thank you so much, and I really mean that. I've been a fan of your stuff for years. I remember listening to his stuff while writing essays or working on my screenplays or just anything, and I just loved it. I was like, man, I love this blend of like horror with gnomes, and it's done in like a synth kind of way, and I think it's so cool. And I'm gonna read off his answers later on. It's gonna be really, really cool. He was very it was almost like cryptic talking to him, where he's like, I will send you my answers. And I'm like, all right, man, sounds good. I'm just honored to be talking to you. But yeah, hopefully, and we're going to play some of his music later. I don't know why I didn't mention that, but we're going to play that. We're going to play that because it's like a Dungeon Synth themed show today, and pretty much every show will be. We're going to play, now that I found a loophole, now that I can play the music legally on here through the computer as opposed to the library of music that we have saved here. We're going to play a lot more Dungeon Synth, Gnome Synth, Halloween Synth. We're going to play some Dark Ambient. We're going to play a lot different stuff every week. Thanks to the loophole. Thanks to years of me pivoting and trying to figure out how to play music on here. It just came down to me being like, okay, I just have to find out which music I can legally play on this show. And then if it's not in the library, I'll just play it through the computer mic that I used for the sound bites, and that'll work. And hey, you know what? I'm glad I got there. But anyway, let's get into some Lord of the Rings news, man. Let's get Gandalf to cue us in. Oh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. F yeah. Gotta love Gandalf. Couple cool things this week. One pretty cool thing, rather. But first, let's get into This Day in Middle-earth, because it's a pretty packed week, probably the most packed week we've had in all of this week in Middle-earth. So far, at least. Complete opposite of the last week where the Fellowship were just going down the River Anduin. Was it the River Anduin? It's the river that goes from Lothlorien it goes all the way through Osgiliath and to the ocean, but it goes to the Argonath and Amon Hen, which is where the breaking of the Fellowship happens, which happened this week. This week in the books, the Fellowship were attacked on the river by the orcs of Isengard, and the breaking of the Fellowship ensued, along with, sadly, probably the most tragic death in all of fantasy, at least to me, and that being the death of Boromir. He died protecting Pippin and Merry from the Isengard orcs, and in the book, he was shot down by a bunch of Isengard archers, and then actually at the beginning of Two Towers, when he was killed. And but in the movie, he is shot down by the character Lurtz, who is the leader of the Uruk-hai. And which version do I prefer? I mean, I love both versions, but I really like Lurtz as a character. He's one of I feel like every character that was just from the movies in the Lord of the Rings movies was a really solid adage to the kind of story. I can't really think of any that I felt were kind of unnecessary to be there, or at least didn't feel right. Pretty much all the characters, like movie made or not, were pretty solid. But on Lurtz, I definitely prefer Lurtz. I just think he looks really cool. He 100% looks like a Uruk chieftain, and I love it, man. And I love that scene of him, Boromir. It's so beautifully shot and directed and acted, of course, by Sean Bean, the great actor. So beautiful of him in slow motion, just fighting off Uruk-hai one by one, protecting Pippin and Merry, and not caring at all that he's not just getting shot by regular arrows, which of course is, I'm pretty sure, painful enough. I don't think that's a hot take to have. It hurts to get shot by an arrow. But he's getting shot by, like, if you watch the movie closely, it's like these thick, like sharp, thick bladed arrows, like thick arrows, really sharp and just everything. And they're just driving right into him. And keep in mind, they're being like shot by like the 7 foot tall, or he looks like he's really tall, just this really big muscular orc like that or Uruk-hai, sorry. That bow in the movie, when you see him pull it back, you can just tell that, like, you probably have to like, what's the word? It's like 200 pounds of force or something. It's not 200 pounds, but like, I remember, I don't know why that number came to my mind, but like, you can tell it's like at least like 100 pounds of force that like pushes that arrow out of that bow. And it's such a beautiful scene. And I'm not going to lie, I've cried watching that scene. I have cried watching that scene. And it still gets to me, man. It still gets to me. It still gets to me. But it's a great scene, and it's as tragic as that kind of whole thing is. The breaking of the Fellowship, and I guess you could call it a battle with, you have these like 200 Uruk-hai. It looks like 200. It looks like a lot, at least, going after the Fellowship. You have, the Fellowship against like a bunch of Uruk-hai. I guess you could say it's a battle, like the Battle of Ammon-Hen. I don't know. Either way, I think it's a really cool part in the movie, and I haven't gotten there in the books, and I really want to finish the books. Tonight, I'm going to see if I have the Two Towers. I'm going to pick it up and start reading it tonight, because I really want to finish those. There's so many freaking books I need to finish, man. It sucks. It sucks, man, because I have so many to finish, and I only have so much time. Only so many hours in the day, and I'm already spread thin like a mother effer. But anyway, the breaking of the Fellowship is, of course, a really beautiful, tragic part of the Lord of the Rings, but it's also a really cool just battle. I love Aragorn fighting. I love just seeing Aragorn fighting through the Uruk-hai with Gimli and Legolas there to help him out, and I think it's really cool. But on top of that, we also had Theodred, who is the son of Theoden, who is the king of the kingdom Rohan, which Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Merry, Pippin, pretty much for the most part where the second movie and second book take place is in the kingdom of Rohan, which is basically a kingdom that is ruled by a society of horse riding knights, basically, or horse warriors. It's called the home of the horse lords, and it's this very rocky, hilly part of Middle Earth, and it's ruled by these much more, I don't want to say primitive, but just less advanced kind of. They're very Anglo-Saxon, where they kind of live in wooden castles, and they just ride, and their main form of fighting is horse fighting. Its main form of battle is horse battling, and I think that's really cool. But that's the prince of that kingdom died this week, sadly, at the hands of the Isengard forces, and Éomer was there to discover it. Éomer being, I think, the main captain of the Rohan military, I'm pretty sure. And also in the same week, he abandons the orders of the king, and he attacks the orcs at Fangorn. And that is because the king of Rohan is sadly cursed and under a spell of the evil wizard Saruman, who is the wizard, who's kind of the bad guy wizard, who's the main villain of the Two Towers, if you want to pick a main villain of the Two Towers. That being the sequel in Lord of the Rings. But anyway, this week that happens, and then this week at the same time, because this happens literally in that battle, Pippin and Merry, who were captured by the Uruk-hai after Boromir was killed, and Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are chasing after to save them. Pippin and Merry escaped the orcs as they were attacked by Éomer and escape into the forest of Fangorn. And pretty eventful week, man. Essentially the last, 30 minutes of the Fellowship of the Ring and the first 30 minutes of the Two Towers basically happened over the last week. Pretty crazy stuff, man. Very eventful. Also, with the actual news, though, this week, with the open world RPG Lord of the Rings game that I guess is happening again all of a sudden, is apparently not only going to be from the Shire to Mordor. That's kind of the land it's going to take place in. Kind of this, basically, I'm guessing just all of Middle Earth. It's also going to have it's also going to be fully open world. Like you can just go anywhere you want in that world, and I sincerely hope so. I mean, I would love to visit Helm's Deep and Erebor, and I mainly would just want to visit. As much as I love Helm's Deep, I think I would just go right for Moria, and then I would go to Erebor, and then probably Lake Town, and then Dale. I'd want to go to those places probably first. But I'm excited though. I'm excited for that video game to come out. I'll definitely play it when it comes out. Faux show. I just hope it's good. You never know, man. You never know these days. Anyways, let's play some other synthy songs, and we'll get into some horror movie news. To play us in to the horror movie news, we're going to play a band that I'm a huge fan of. I've been listening to them for years. I've been really interested in just this really gnarly sound. Playing us into the horror movie news segment, and then they'll play us out of the segment as well. We're going to put on a little band called Pumpkin Witch. Really cool Halloween dungeon synth kind of themed band. And yeah, this song is called A Dark October. Hope you enjoy. Talk to you in a minute. All right, that was, of course, Pumpkin Witch with their pretty awesome song, A Dark October, from their album Final Strike of the Pumpkin Witch. Gotta love that song, man. I just love how it just sounds so, like, hokey, like so hokey Halloween and just so, like, cartoony, and it just makes me think of, you know, like those old cartoon kind of spooky Halloween kind of kid shows or movies or something like that you would watch when you were young, and it's really interesting. I really like it. It makes me think of like Count Chocula and stuff like that too, and I love that just really weird, cool, but weird in a good way, of course, but really just interesting, cool sound to it. I remember listening to them when it was my freshman year here, like my first year at Central was when I first discovered them, and I was like, man, this sounds freaking interesting. I've never heard this before. And this was when I was really getting into dungeon synth, like a lot. And I remember hearing that and just being like, I've never heard anything like this before. This is so cool. And it is, man. It is, man. Pumpkin Witch, if you want to come on the show, man, you guys are totally invited. Anyway, though, with that being said, let's, of course, get into horror movie news. Oh! Good stuff. A couple cool things this week with horror movie news. Apparently, the movie Frankenstein, directed by Guillermo del Toro, which came out a few months ago, is going into the Criterion Collection. Pretty solid. Makes sense. Why wouldn't you put it there? A lot of people loved it. There you go. I didn't love it to death, but I really liked it. I thought it was a really cool movie for sure. I think I gave it like an 8.7 out of 10 or something. I thought it was really good. I really liked it, but good stuff. Also, if anybody saw the leaked Scary Movie trailer of the Scary Movie coming out soon, then kind of the revamped kind of, it's coming back. There you go. Scary Movie. I saw the trailer for it, like somebody filmed it in the theater, and it looked so funny, and I'm so excited for this movie to come back. Just this whole series to come back, but I'm a huge fan of those movies. I just love a good parody. I love them so much. I think they're just so fun to watch, and I love that we have Marlon Wayans in it and all the other classic characters. I'm really looking forward to it, man. I'm really looking forward to it. Also, Playhouse, a new horror movie, is going to unearth VHS tapes from an unaired kid show. So that sounds pretty freaking creepy. I'll definitely check that out. That sounds like a pretty interesting, gnarly movie. I mean, it kind of just makes me think of like creepypastas and stuff like that. It kind of has that vibe to it. But I didn't know about this movie until I guess I saw a post about it a week ago, and then when I was putting together the show notes today, I was going through my saved Instagram like notes, kind of like saved posts that were news, like horror news, and I saw that and I went, oh yeah, like that's so weird. I haven't even heard of this movie, and it sounds so interesting. It just seems like a creepypasta kind of movie, so I'll check it out when it comes out. Also, Terrifier 4, the final entry into that series of films of just those gore fest of movies. Apparently, the final one, Terrifier 4, is going to be released next year on Halloween. Very fitting. And it's kind of gnarly that we're waiting like close to 2 years, or like at least a year and a half for this movie to come out. But you know what? I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. But yeah, not a lot of stuff really happening with the horror movie news area, but pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff. Also, Carmen Electra might return for a Scary Movie. I mean, I hope that happens. I mean, she was in the first one, and she had the very iconic parody kill of like the Scream movie, and I thought it was pretty good. But yeah, pretty crazy stuff, man. Pretty crazy stuff. I mean, I never got super into the Terrifier movies, but I gotta watch them now if I want to get to that fourth one. And I'm excited to see Playhouse, and I'm hoping just for more good horror movies to come along the way. I'm definitely planning to review more underground, obscure horror movies for this show, and just get more into that stuff, because horror is definitely one of my favorite genres, I must say. I've always loved it for just the pure adrenaline rush it gives you, and I definitely prefer horror movies that are legitimately really scary a lot of the time. But I also love horror movies that aren't super scary, but are just really cool. I also love those too. I mean, it might be a weird example, but I love Killer Clowns from Outer Space so much Not because, I mean, at times it's a little spooky. I mean, I thought it was kind of scary when I was a kid. I know my sister got nightmares of it, which is understandable. But I love it more just because I love the wacky, cool aesthetic of it. But I was talking about this with my roommate the other day, where we both kind of agreed that we wished that more, or at least I was into this idea, where I kind of wish more horror movies had a balance of coolness and scariness. And I don't mean all horror movies. I just mean I wish more were. And one of the reasons I love stuff like Hellraiser, or love like, Friday the 13th, or, just kind of movies like that, is I love that they're definitely scary, but they got some cool stuff going on with it. Like Jason looks so cool as a villain. But, I think it's more of a hot take. It's not really a hot take. It's more just like, I feel like I'm missing something probably when I say that. But one of the reasons I love Hellraiser so much is I love that it has that balance of coolness and like actual scariness. But at the same time, though, I love movies like Hereditary or Midsommar, or just movies like that where they have less cool stuff going on, but they make up for it in having a great story with amazing acting and an awesome soundtrack and being legitimately horrifying to watch. So they feel like pure adrenaline. So I definitely enjoy watching those movies a lot. I love those. I remember being before I transferred to Central, I was at Evergreen State College, and I remember being in my apartment at that college and watching Hereditary, and then when I was done watching it, I couldn't leave my room because it was the middle of the night, and outside my room was a really long and really dark hallway because it was like 1 a.m. when I was done watching it, and I was terrified to walk down that hallway, even to just go to the bathroom. So that's how you know a horror movie did a good job. That's how you know, man. But anyway, that's about it for horror movie news and just me rambling about horror movies. Why don't we just jump right into Nerd Alert? But actually, let's play another Pumpkin Witch song that'll cue us out of horror movie news, and then we'll get into Nerd Alert and the whole thing. So this next Pumpkin Witch song is from another one of their albums, and this song is called Night Falls on the Hovel of the Pumpkin Witch. Hope you enjoy. Oh, yeah. That was, of course, Pumpkin Witch with their classic song being Night Falls on the Hovel of the Pumpkin Witch. Pretty awesome song, pretty out there song. Man, that was a pretty gnarly ending, I must say. I just love that it's pure atmosphere. It's just pure Halloween atmosphere, and it's a great time, man. Check out Pumpkin Witch if you want some pure Halloween atmosphere. But anyways, with that being said, let's get into a little bit of just general nerd news.
Nerd alert!
Oh, yeah. A couple things this week that I thought were pretty cool. We got a new Mortal Kombat trailer of the new movie, which I thought was really, really cool. I watched it, and, you know, I'm getting the feeling like they're just really trying to make up for the last one, and it's paying off. Like, I was watching that, and I was like, man, I'm not going to lie, this feels like Mortal Kombat. Like, this feels like I'm watching a Mortal Kombat movie, and I'm really excited to see it, especially seeing, you know, Shao Kahn and seeing that Johnny Cage is the main character and seeing Shang Tsung come back and just all this stuff. I'm really excited to watch it. It comes out in April, I believe, and I'm uber excited to watch it. Like, legit, I think it's going to be way better than the one that came out a few years ago. If you liked the one that came out a few years ago, more power to you. But a lot of MK fans, including me, thought it sucked. You know, we thought it was fun, but I've grown to appreciate parts of it for sure. And I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's pretty fun, but I'm definitely excited for the next one. That's for sure. The Batman Part 2 is apparently it's just reported, it's just a rumor, that it's going to lean more into the horror psychological aspects of Batman, which will make it more scary than the last one. And there were parts of that Batman movie, the first one that came out a few years ago, that were legit scary. And if they lean more into that horror movie kind of vibe with it, I sincerely hope that they do, because I will be really excited to see that. I heard the report I read, it said it was labeled as horror detective movie. So I'm super excited for that. If it's a horror mystery noir movie with Batman being the detective that he is, that sounds amazing. I hope that happens. I mean, they're probably going to do the Long Halloween, and that sounds perfect for like a horror, scary kind of Batman storyline movie. So sounds good. I also saw that Christian Bale apparently was planned to be the DCU Batman. So instead of Ben Affleck, they thought about just having Christian Bale just be the Batman of the DCU. And I think that would have been cool. I mean, he's my favorite Batman, probably. I love Michael Keaton, but honestly, I'm starting to just love Christian Bale's Batman more and more these days, that I think he might be my favorite. And I mean, I would have been happy to see it, I'm not going to lie. But I am glad that they went with Ben Affleck as Batman, because he honestly was such a great Batman. Like, he looked the part, he acted the part. And, you know, the James Gunn universe is really awesome that they're doing now, but I think it's safe to say that as much as the Zack Snyder universe was hated, I think we can all safely agree that if there was one part of it that deserved to get more made from it, it was the Batman, you know. Sure, it was weird that he made Batman kill, but at the same time, everything else was pretty much perfect. So, there you go. Also, Sony is officially rebooting Spider-Man. So they did the Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield, and apparently they're just fully rebooting it. They're not doing anything more with those movies. They're not doing anything more with the Venom movies, I'm assuming, and they're just doing a full new Spider-Man universe. And that's fine with me. That's fine with me. So, sure, why not? Does this mean they'll do a new Spider-Man, like a new actor playing Spider-Man? I mean, yeah, probably. And I'm curious to see who they'll get to play him. Maybe they'll get Tobey Maguire to come back. Probably not. Also, with Spider-Man news, Matthew McConaughey is rumored to be playing the Green Goblin. Apparently, in the next Spider-Man movie with Tom Holland, it's rumored that Matthew McConaughey is going to play Norman Osborn, who, of course, is the character in the comics who becomes the Green Goblin. And I mean, he looks the part, and it'd be really interesting to see him take on that role. So if that happens, I'm excited. Actually, a pretty cool update from the Spawn movie that's been in production for a frickin' 1,000 years at this point. Apparently, it's going to be coming from Blumhouse, and it might be a King Spawn movie. I don't really know who King Spawn is, but I know that's a version of the character. So, sure. I mean, I'm excited to see it. And apparently Todd McFarlane is going to direct the Spawn movie. I mean, we've known this. And I'm just curious how that's going to turn out. And if he does that and he pulls it off, like, that's going to be freaking awesome, because this is a guy who created some of the best comic books of all time, some of the best comic book characters of all time. I mean, Spawn is an awesome character. And he's also been the head writer and creator of the longest running comic book series of all time, like continuous comic book series, like same storyline, I mean, and that being the Spawn series. And on top of that, like, you'd think it would be like Batman or something like that, but pretty much every other major superhero character has been like rebooted or revamped or restarted in some way along the line. Just because there's like 800 Batman issues doesn't mean that they're in the same continuum altogether. I'm pretty sure there was a few reboots along the way. Spawn is the longest running storyline series that has had no reboots, I think. I think that's what it means, at least. But I want to read more of Spawn and Image Comics and stuff like that. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the case. But yeah, he's made some amazing stuff, and he's also made some awesome toys, and just has been a huge kind of figurehead in the comic book community and the toy community, and he's probably made some really awesome video games. And on top of that, I like the Spawn movie from the 90s. A lot of people don't, but I like it, so there you go. But yeah, that's about it for general nerd news. Not a whole ton of stuff, but let's play some Killer Gnome, and we'll cue that in. That'll be our cue for the Killer Gnome interview that I'll be reading the answers to and the questions, and it's going to be really cool, man. It's going to be really interesting. This is from the Killer Gnome's first release that I heard a few years ago that I thought was so cool, and we're going to play that song, the first song from the album. Oh, I'm sorry, not the first song from the album, but this will be the first song of his music we're going to play. This is one of my personal favorite tracks of his from the first release, the first EP of the Killer Gnome project. This song is called Frenzy. Hope you enjoy. Oh, right. That was, of course, Killer Gnome with the classic, awesome song, Frenzy. I love the sound of that song, and I love the atmosphere of it, and it really just fits that vibe of a killer gnome, and I love it, man. It's so cool. And I'm not going to lie, I love the other stuff that we've been playing, but I like how crisp that production is. It's like kind of a nice breath of fresh air. But don't get me wrong, I love lo-fi production. I just like that we're having variety of like crisp stuff, and then we got some more lo-fi stuff, and then we got some kind of in the middle with Mortis being kind of crisp, but also lo-fi. I like that we're all over the place. I think it's cool. Each production gives its own atmosphere. Like Pumpkin Witch with that really lo-fi production, I love that it really emphasizes that retro, really creepy Pumpkin Witch kind of vibe. Like if I heard that music during Halloween and it was like the 1600s, and for some reason I heard that music, I would be like, it feels like, man, it's really Halloween, isn't it? I don't know why I went Texan for that, but whatever. And if I heard, Fototuhushk from Mortis and I was in the middle of the Norwegian mountains, I'd be like, oh yeah, we out here. For sure. And then if I heard Frenzy by Killer Gnome or any of Killer Gnome's stuff, and I was in the middle of like a quiet neighborhood in the middle of the night, like a quiet suburban neighborhood in the middle of the night, I would be convinced that a Killer Gnome was about to freaking get me, dude. So there you go. But yeah, I had the pleasure of contacting and corresponding with Killer Gnome for the past few weeks, and I was really surprised to actually hear him respond to my message. I just reached out to him on Bandcamp, and I was like, hey, I run a show on the radio, a podcast show, and I'd love to play some of your music, and maybe if you'd like, I'd love to interview you. And he got back to me pretty soon, and he was like, yeah, like you can totally play my music, and send over your questions and I'll answer them. And I was like, great, this is awesome. And I thought it was so cool because I was like, man, I was listening to this guy a few years ago, and I never expected I would actually be talking to this person, like actually getting in contact with him and like asking him questions and everything. And it was such an honor, sir. Thank you so much for getting back to me and giving me this opportunity. And I'm happy I'm the first person to play your music on 881 The Berg. Not only am I the first DJ to play Dungeon Synth on 881 The Berg, but I'm also one of the first to, I'm just flaunting, I'm just totally bragging, but I don't care. I'm not only the first to play classic Dungeon Synth, but Halloween Synth and Gnome Synth. We just did it, man. We just did it. You and me, Killer Gnome. We did it, man. We did it. Us together, we brought in the arrival of Gnome Synth. But anyway, of all the questions I asked him, I'll run through them. Let's do it. My first question to him was, what first drew you into Gnome Synth, and what made you want to start creating it rather than just listening to Dungeon Synth or related genres? And his response was, to be honest, I don't think Gnome Synth is a thing. Interesting. I was surprised to read that. The whole concept of the first album was something that came unintentionally and after I was finished with the tracks. So you can say the idea of the whole aesthetic and theme was inspired by the music itself. And I thought that was a really cool answer because I was surprised to hear that the music came first and then the theme came later, at least if I'm reading that right. And it definitely, when I listen to the music, it definitely is the vibe, kind of spooky Halloween stuff. And spooky, and what I mean by spooky Halloween is it just has that spooky vibe. Like it makes you think of like a Goosebumps episode, and the fact that there's a Goosebumps episode with evil gnomes in it, I think probably adds to it as well. But the fact that he kind of the fact that the concept came after he was finished with the tracks is really interesting to me because the tracks definitely have that vibe, and the concept of a killer gnome works so well with the sound. So that's really interesting. I like that, and it's great music either way. I feel like if he did any other theme, it still would have worked really well musically. So I'm not saying that like it didn't fit the gnome thing. I'm just saying it fits the gnome thing so well, but also the music is so cool in and of itself that if it was literally just like synth beats, I would still be listening to it. So the music's great, and the theme just makes it even better. So I love it. I went on to ask him, I went on to ask him, were you initially a fan of Dungeon Synth before developing Gnome Synth, or were there other styles of music that led you into this direction? And he went on to say, many people don't know this, but Killer Gnome is not my main project in the whole Dungeon Synth genre, even though it's the most viral one. My main project is Varvatos, so check out Varvatos if you can. They're on Bandcamp at least, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I looked it up. They are on Bandcamp. So check out Varvatos, absolutely. If you want to put a label on it, he goes, my main project is Varvatos, which, if you want to put a label on it, you can say is epic fantasy synth. So yeah, I was and still am a fan of dungeon synth, and I have many friends in the scene. That's really, really cool. And I was surprised. I mean, I didn't know that he had a main project, not because Killer Gnome is a project that really exists by itself. I mean, I remember emailing the account that just said Killer Gnome, and I had no idea it was connected to Varvatos. So that's really, really cool. Yeah, and I was surprised that it wasn't his main project. I thought for some reason just Killer Gnome was, but talk about like a really prolific musician. The fact that he's able to do these two separate projects. Like, I've just put out, like, I can only imagine, because I've only put out like a little EP with a friend of mine back home, and that was a lot of just hard work. And the fact that this guy does more than that in both Gnome and Dungeon Synth is pretty cool. I went on to ask him, were you initially a fan of Dungeon Synth before developing Gnome Synth, or were there other styles of music that led you in this direction? And he said, many people don't know this, but Oh, I'm sorry. Why did I just read that off? I just read that question. What's wrong with me? I don't know why I just read that. I'm so dumb. So dumb. I can't believe. Anyway, the third question that I actually asked him is, do you see Gnome Synth as something distinct from Dungeon Synth, or more like a branch growing out of it? And he went on to say, you can say both. Obviously, it's not pure Dungeon Synth, but we can agree that it's inspired by it. I mean, that's totally fair. And he put in parentheses, sound selection, aesthetic, and composition, etc. He goes, the way rock and roll music was inspired by the blues. And I think that's a really interesting way to think about it, because it's true. Like, there's a lot of, surprisingly, there's a ton of dungeon synth subgenres, which I think is really, really interesting, because dungeon synth in and of itself is not a super well-known genre to a lot of people. It's only becoming like more and more popular now. But I remember being into it years ago in like 2020, like first finding out what it was in like 2020, and nobody knew what it was at the time, which I thought was really cool. And it's still very much underground, but even the genre then, it had a lot of subgenres of this genre that nobody knew about. So I remember finding a lot of music from this genre that I legit was like, okay, yeah, like I know I grew up on quote unquote underground music. And, when I say quote unquote, I mean, when I was young, I was listening to Black Flag, or I was listening to black metal and stuff like that, stuff that is considered still in the underground. But at the same time, like, these bands have played for huge audiences and are really well known around the world. Whereas when I was getting into Dungeon Synth, that was the first genre of music where I was thinking to myself, okay, not saying that other stuff isn't underground, but if there's anything that is legit, like very few people are into this, it was Dungeon Synth. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think it's interesting how, yeah, like even with this underground genre of music, it still even has subgenres in and of itself. And Gnome Synth is just one of those. You also got Dino Synth, you have Neanderthal Synth, you have Halloween Synth, you have Pirate Synth a little bit, you also have Samurai Synth, which we'll be playing later on. And it's really interesting. So I like that answer a lot. I think that's really cool. Also, he went on to say, I went on to ask him, before working with synth-based music, what other genres of music or forms of art influenced you the most? And he said, this might sound cheesy, but everything. I tend to keep something from every media I consumed throughout my lifetime. Either that would be some cringe artsy movie with a 3.5 rating on IMDb, to an epic fantasy movie with dragons and battles, to bootleg hip-hop CDs I bought from a guy on the beach when I was 10. That's really cool, man. I mean, I relate to buying the hip-hop CDs. I remember when I went to England for the first time, and I was there by myself, and I was just walking through Camden Town, which is a part of London, and this guy just on the street was selling his hip-hop CDs, and he convinced me to buy one of them, and I've been there, and I still have it. I think I have it somewhere, I think in storage. So I get that, and I think that's really interesting. I mean, when you think about it, with a lot of forms of art, you're really inspired consciously and unconsciously by everything around you in some way. I remember reading about how the guys from Metallica, when Dave Mustaine was in the band, he wrote he said he said that he wrote the riff to the Four Horsemen, and it was unconsciously inspired by Sweet Home Alabama, which I thought was really interesting. And I think that goes to show here, and this guy here, I feel like he's just very conscious of it, that you're inspired by everything, every kind of art or media you consume. It'll influence your creativity in some way. And I like that he just is like, yeah, like everything. And I think that's cool. I went on to ask him, your work balances playful fantasy with a darker horror atmosphere. How intentional is that contrast when you're writing new music? And his answer was, as I said before, the theme came after I was finished with the music. Of course, I had an idea while I was making the music since I used a lot of 80s sounds, but while I was listening to the tracks, while mastering them, I thought to myself, so it has 80s horror vibes, it has DS vibes, how can I combine the two? With a lot of brainstorming, I thought of some movies that helped shape the whole aesthetic, like Gremlins and Child's Play. If it wasn't obvious, that's what he put in parentheses. And integrated that concept to a medieval fantasy setting, and boom, Killer Gnome. That's a really, really cool idea. I mean, that's a really interesting evolution of ideas. Because, yeah, it has definitely dungeon synth vibes. Like when I was going through Spotify and finding artists in the dungeon synth genres, one of the artists that I ran into while going through dungeon synth and subgenres of dungeon synth was Killer Gnome. So Killer Gnome stuff was in that world. And it definitely has that fantasy vibe to the music for sure. And I think it makes sense for you to go, okay, what's a mixture of like something that's 80s, horror, and fantasy? And I mean, yeah, like movies like Gremlins and Child's Play totally work. And honestly, this music would work so good with a Gremlins movie. So that's really, really cool. And yeah, I mean, I guess if there's one creature that has the combination of dungeon kind of fantasy stuff, horror with an 80s kind of hue over it, I guess putting all those together would be kind of a gremlin, but I like that you probably went further than that and you're like, let's do a gnome. And that's really cool to me. I think that's cool. My next question to him was, when you're creating a track, where does it usually begin for you? An image, a mood, a melody, or something else entirely? And he said, usually it's me opening digital audio workstation while I'm bored and fiddling around with checking sounds, creating melodies, etc. And if I come up with something cool, I continue until it's finished. Otherwise, if I'm not happy in the first 10 minutes, I scrap the whole idea and start again. That makes sense. I mean, if you're not really into it from the beginning, it's hard to make it work. And, sometimes with ideas, like you can probably sense that there's something there if it's not completely working. But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If if a riff to a song or something like that, it sounds cool, but you just can't get it to work, I think it makes sense to be like, okay, I'm going to at least save this and I'm just going to try something else, at least for now. So that makes sense. My next question to him was, how important are narrative and world-building elements to your music? Does the story come first, or does it emerge naturally from the sound? And he said, yeah, I think I explained it earlier. And I mean, yeah, a little bit. He definitely did. Happens with my main project and every music project I have as well. It's not just Killer Gnome. And that makes sense. Like, get inspired by the music. What is the music telling you? And I think that's actually a cool way to approach songwriting or approach any other kind of art form. Like, what is the core of it telling you? What is the music telling you? So I think that's cool. Outside music, were there any films, books, games, or other media that influenced the concept and tone of Killer Gnome? And he said, I answered this unintentionally. And I mean, yeah, I guess so, but whatever. It works. But he made sure to kind of double down and say the 80s comedy horror movies played a big role. When it comes to Killer Gnome, games and books weren't a big influence this time. I mean, that makes sense. I wasn't, I remember listening to this music, and I wasn't ever really thinking, oh yeah, this was definitely inspired by like books or games or something like that. I think I can definitely see that this was totally inspired by like movies with music. So that makes sense. My next question was, what originally sparked the idea to approach gnome synth with a horror lens rather than purely a whimsical one? And he goes, we already had projects portraying gnomes as chill and laid back creatures. Very true. That they do nothing but sit under mushrooms, smoking their pipes and drinking all day. But we didn't have anything where they were portrayed as psychopaths committing horrendous crimes. The contrast is just very funny to me. And I mean, that's totally fair. The only kind of instance I had ever seen of an evil gnome was in that Goosebumps episode, Attack of the Evil Gnomes, or I think it's called something like that. And yeah, I mean, it's a much more original idea than just going for like a goblin theme or something like that, or a gremlin theme. So yeah, that makes total sense. And it is kind of a funny thing. Like, you don't expect it to see that. You don't expect to see something like that. And if there was a movie that was about like a horrifying, horrendous, homicidal gnome, then it'd be really it'd be hard for a lot of people to be truly scared with that, I feel. But I mean, I'd think it'd be really cool though. I feel like it would have kind of that vibe of Killer Clowns from Outer Space, where yeah, you could make it scary sometimes, but for the most part, it's just like an aesthetically weird, over the top, crazy movie. So yeah, fair enough. My next question was, are there particular synthesizers, sounds, or tools you find yourself returning to again and again when working on Killer Gnome? And he said, Killer Gnome is a mix of dungeon synth, hip-hop, and 80s synth music. So I mainly use virtual instruments that emulate retro synthesizers of the 80s, like Yamaha DX7, the 90s, like Korg Triton and Korg M1. And when it comes to the hip-hop part, I just make the drum loops myself. I mean, fair enough. I mean, that's some really good gear to keep in mind if anyone wants to get into the gnome synth, horror synth kind of, or just dungeon synth genre. That makes sense to go there. I mean, I think it's cool that you're using like gear from that kind of time period, and you're also kind of blending it with modern age stuff, like making the drum loops yourself. And I'm sure using the software you mentioned earlier probably helps a lot with that kind of stuff too. But I like that you're using like these actual retro synthesizers from the 80s and 90s. I think that's really, really cool, especially Korg. Like I love that company, and the Yamaha stuff, of course, too. How do you know when a track is finished? What tells you that a piece has reached its final form? And he went on to say, if I can say with certainty, okay, that's enough, then it's ready to have a tiny bit, then it's ready. If I have a tiny bit of concern that it needs something, I just work on it until I figure out what that something was and fix it. And yeah, I mean, that's totally fair. That's not the first time I've heard that. I've heard that from other songwriters, where some songwriters will just work with a song and they'll tinker with it and rework it, rewrite it, and just kind of do that for as long as they can until they get to a point where they realize, I can't really tinker with this or mess around with this anymore. It's just I can't think of anything else to do, and that's when they're like, okay, it's done. And so makes sense. Solid songwriting process. My next question was, do you feel connected to a broader underground synth or dungeon synth community, or do you mostly work in your own creative space? And he said, when it comes to Killer Gnome, no, I'm not. It's a thing. I think it's a thing of its own, and with all the gatekeeping that's going on in the scene, I try to keep as far away as possible. Like a parent, where you don't want your kid to go to specific places that they will only do more harm than good. Now, when it comes to my main project, I'm very much connected, and I know a lot of people in the scene and met a lot of them personally. That's really, really cool. And I mean, that makes sense. I mean, with any underground scene, one of my pet peeves with underground music and kind of alternative scenes in general is the gatekeeping. And I mean, it's kind of the case with most kind of fandoms. There's gatekeeping going on and like hardcore fans and things like that. But yeah, I mean, that's totally fair. I think it's at least a safe approach to just be like, you know what, I'm going to make the music I want to make with this, and regardless if people like it or not, I'm just going to make what I like, and I'm just going to put it out, and just whatever happens. So totally fair. Are there any other artists in the underground synth world whose work you feel inspired by? And he said, as a matter of fact, he said, not really. And he goes, I don't mean this in a bad way, but I explained earlier how I work and how I feel about it, how I feel about originality. I admire a lot of them, and I'm a fan of many, but saying my project sounds like this, insert name, doesn't sit right with me. I mean, that's fair. You want to keep it original to yourself, and I think it's not worth comparing yourself to other people. Definitely just think of, you in your own lane, and you're just doing your thing. So totally fair. And you know what? I think that mindset has kind of paid off, because Killer Gnome, one of the reasons I got into the project is it's a super original sounding project. So yeah. The next question was, are there types of music you enjoy that might surprise people who only know you through Killer Gnome? And he said many. As I said, Killer Gnome is not my main project, rather than a thing I started randomly one day as an experiment, let's say. I'm also in an alternative rock band playing the bass, in a black metal band playing the guitar. I have my main DS project, and I accompany another DS project in live performances playing a drum. That's just the projects I'm currently in. I like all kinds of music and genres, and their branches: rock, metal, electronic, folk, ambient, and the list goes on. If you love music, you don't just stick to one genre. That's so true, man. I'm totally with you there. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. They just lie that they do. That's totally fair. I mean, that's so true. If you listen to one genre of music and you swear that's the only one, I think two things. I think you're lying or something's wrong with you. That's just me, though. He goes, for me, it sounds interesting and something unique. I like it no matter the genre. That's his filter. If it sounds interesting and it's unique, he likes it. And that's totally fair. I mean, I'm all over the place. I mean, the first genre of music that I fell in love with was when I was a kid, when I got into classic rock and heavy metal and punk. But ever since then, like, I feel that. Like, my music taste is all over the place because I would just get bored listening to one genre of music. And yeah, that's totally fair. I'm happy that you're so diverse in your influences and your taste and everything. That's a true artist right there, I must say. A person who can play their own stuff and be inspired by and appreciate other stuff that you would be surprised by. My final question to him was, looking ahead, what keeps you excited about continuing this project? Are there new ideas or directions you're interested in exploring? And he said, might be a bummer to some, but I think Killer Gnome will come to an end after a trilogy. That means one more album, and then that's it. I see a lot of people milking something that was good at first, but ended up in a dumpster fire along the way, and I don't want that for Killer Gnome. I want it to be remembered as something great, and not as something I did for marketing and money-grabbing reasons after a certain point. I'm very self-conscious with what I have here, and I know that thing is not something I can continue in the long run, not because I won't have any ideas for it, but because everything has its predetermined lifespan, let's say. I mean, that's totally fair. I mean, whenever I hear an artist saying that they want to end whatever they're doing in just a solid spot as opposed to just milking it for all it's worth, I think it's a much more respectable way to go. You know, I mean, there's certain projects that I'm a huge fan of because they ended in a place where what you're left with is just kind of the best of the best. Like, as much as I would want for, you know, like, what's a good example? Like the Terminator movies. I mean, we know James Cameron is coming back for another movie, but when he stated that the Terminator story prior to that was really just Terminator 1 and 2, if we had an alternate universe where Terminator was just Terminator 1 and 2 and we never got Terminator 3 or Rise of the Machines or, like, you know, Salvation or any of the spin-offs, just any of that stuff. Like, we didn't have any of the other Terminator stuff. We just have 1 and 2. We'd have a lot less content, but we would have the best of the best. Like, we would have the only two pieces of the Terminator that everybody just loves. And so that makes sense. And I think that would have been a wiser move to just be like, okay, no more Terminator, just these two. And I think the same goes for, you know, a lot of bands as well. And I think there are certainly some bands that if they ended at a certain point, what we would have been left with was just all the awesome stuff they did. And it's kind of bittersweet because we, of course, you know, we're human. We want more of everything. Like, I'm not going to lie. I would love to get 10 Killer Gnome albums. But the fact that this guy is like, hey, you know, I got one more left in the tank because I just want this to be a trilogy and I want it to be 3 solid albums that just work really well as a trilogy as well as on their own individually, I think that's fair. I mean, if we want to bring it back to Tolkien a little bit, I mean, part of the reason Lord of the Rings is so awesome is because, you know, I love that it doesn't have a sequel. I love that so much. And yeah, there's so much more content in the world of Tolkien, but I love that Lord of the Rings is such a perfect trilogy and there's nothing after it. I think it's so great and so awesome. And, you know, that's totally fair with what he's saying here. But yeah, that's the interview I did with Killer Gnome via email. And I just want to thank you again, sir. Thank you so much for letting me have this opportunity to interview one of my favorite artists that honestly deserves more recognition. So if you're listening right now, check out Killer Gnome. He's not only on Bandcamp, but he's also on Spotify and all the other music platforms, I'm pretty sure. But he's at least on Bandcamp and Spotify. Check him out there. Also on YouTube. Great artist. Great innovative artist in the realm of dungeon synth, gnome synth, but also more so check out his main fantasy synth project called Varvados, also on Bandcamp as well and other music streaming platforms. Check it all out. Great artist. Thank you so much again, Killer Gnome, for letting me have this interview for you. And to play out the show, I want to play one more of your songs before we end the show. And that next song we're going to play is from the first Killer Gnome EP. This song is going to be called Night of the Chase. So, yeah, hope you enjoy. Thank you so much once again for the interview. And, yeah, let's hear some more Killer Gnome before we get into our final outro of the show. Talk to you in a minute. All right, that was, of course, Killer Gnome with this classic track, Night of the Chase, from his first release. Such a great song, such a great atmosphere. Loved it. Once again, thank you so much, Killer Gnome, for the opportunity to interview you. Wish you all the best. And I will be playing more of your music on the show, so look forward to future episodes of playing the first release of Killer Gnome, the second release of Killer Gnome, and of course, all of his other projects as well, because I want the dungeon to be a place where I not only just play the music I love, but play music that I feel more people need to hear about. So anyways, so I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. We got to play some more music. It was a little bumpy because I'm not used to playing the music through the computer, but you know, it's all good. It's all good. We got to hear some Mortis, we got to hear some Pumpkin Witch, and we got to hear some Killer Gnome. So I had fun. I hope you guys did too. And next week, we'll be back on the regular show we'll be reviewing a movie for next week and going over some top fives and just kind of diving into more retro, obscure media and just kind of doing stuff like that. And sounds fun to me at least. But yeah, also next week, we'll be playing some other dark ambient stuff, and we'll be also playing some samurai dungeon synth. We'll be playing one of my favorite artists known as Shogun's Castle. We'll be playing them next week, so I'm excited for that. But so I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll end it as I always do. And I thought with like a piece of advice that I thought I'd talk about this week, and that's take a chill pill. You know, learn to take a chill pill sometimes. And I mean, I definitely learned that the hard way, over the last like 2 weeks, just getting so overwhelmed with spreading myself thin that, a couple times I just, wanted to just go crazy. And, it's tough, when you work yourself to death all the time. And, I'm somebody that feels like I kind of have this shark mentality where if I'm just not constantly working, I feel like I'm just going to drown. If a shark stands still, he'll drown. That's how they work. And, I have definitely learned the hard way because I just was exceedingly stressed and felt pressured and, so exhausted that I just crashed a couple times. And over the weekend, I just needed to take a chill pill. And last weekend, I had to do it too. And I'm still kind of in a chill pill stage where I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep working, but I'm going to slow down. I'm not going to make myself do like 10 things a day, do like, because every day it's like, I got to work on my art project. I got to work on my homework. I got to go to work. I got to, prep for the show. I got to do a reel for Instagram, for the Vicky'S Dungeon Instagram and TikTok. I got to do all this stuff. I got to apply for more jobs. I got to do all this stuff like every day. And, I'm not saying woe is me or anything like that, but, doing that every day and never giving yourself at least like half a day off here and there, it runs you dry or whatever the word is for, whatever the, you get gassed, you feel gassed, you're going to feel destroyed after a while. So if there's anything I would encourage people to do, and this is just me talking, you can disagree, it's all good. But whatever's going on, if you're feeling overwhelmed by whatever, just take a chill pill. It's okay. Take a chill pill. You got to do it sometimes. Rest is underrated. Some of the most accomplished people in history prioritized rest. It's just the truth. I know that Albert Einstein was a guy that I think slept, a lot every night, like 10 hours a night, I think, or something like that. And he also just, anything he didn't feel that he needed to focus on, he just like removed. That's why he wore the same suit every day, just so he didn't have to spend mental energy on that. So, it's fair to do that. So what I'm trying to say is take a chill pill. If you need to take a chill pill, just take one, man. Even if it's like, I got to sit down for a few minutes and just decompress. I got to do some meditation. Or honestly, if you truly feel like, what I need a day off today where I just, eat pizza, drink soda, and just watch my favorite movies or play my favorite game, like whatever it is, do it, man. Do it. Rest is it's a powerful thing. It really is. It's like going to the gym. Like if you went to the gym and you just worked out and you didn't rest at all during your entire workout and it was like a 2-hour workout, let me tell you something, man, that workout would injure you. I'm just saying. It depends on what we're talking, but I'm just saying generally in life, if you need some time off, do it. Take some time off, man. Take some time off. And I'm all about making the most of where you are, but I definitely encountered the weird realization of like, oh wow, I'm constantly working all the time. I'm either doing stuff like for my podcast, I'm working on my art pieces, I'm doing homework, I'm at my job, I'm going out to the ranch here to do stuff with horses, I'm at the radio station, and if I'm not doing any of that, I'm like, I'm at the gym or I'm working on a screenplay. It's constant work all the time. And, don't get me wrong, I love doing all of it, but it's when you're trying to like do stuff with it, like not just do it for fun, like actually make something of it all, it feels like work sometimes, and that just comes with the territory, and that's okay, but you can't just constantly push yourself to work all the time. Sometimes you need a chill pill. And so take a chill pill, man, once in a while. Take a day off, take an hour off, take a week off if you need to, whatever you got to do. And because we all need it. We all need it, man. We all need it. We need rest. There's a reason why humans have to sleep. It's to repair the body and get us rejuvenated. We're charging, We're like organic machines. We sleep to charge. We eat and drink to fuel, And it's also we can do our stuff, So take a chill pill if you need to, man, or at least get some good sleep. If there's one opinion that I will happily express on this show that I don't think I need to say, take it with a grain of salt, it's prioritize your sleep. Prioritize your sleep and drink a lot of water. Do those two things. Make sure you drink plenty of water every day and sleep 8 hours a night, and at least do that, man. And once in a while, just take a day off. Just take a day off and decompress, dude. And, whether it's good times or bad times, I think it's always good to just take a chill pill once in a while, But regardless, at the end of the day, whether it's good times or bad times, just know that, just try to make the most of it. And that's part of it, taking a chill pill, because, you got to enjoy the present moment. And if there's anything that days off kind of do for me, it helps me enjoy the present moment by just sitting down and watching a movie and eating pizza or whatever. But yeah, if it's bad times for you, man, just know that you just got to keep going. Just keep going. And what I mean by that is endure. And if that means just taking a chill pill or keep doing your stuff, whatever it is to get you through it, do it. Whatever you think is the right thing for you. Always do what you feel is the right thing. And it's the right thing to do. And on top of that, if it's a good time in your life, hey, I'm happy for you, man. I'm happy for you. And hug it extra tight, savor it, drink it in, because it goes by quick sometimes, so definitely enjoy it. But yeah, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and I'll see you guys next week. See you later.
88.1 The Berg would like to thank our proud sponsor, Happy's Market.
Happy's Market is a convenience store located at